welcome to the Elite Four, a retro Pokemon tournament podcast. My name is Laura.
I'm Tyler.
I'm Rick.
I'm Mark.
Just chowing down.
It's just chomping on pizza.
Well, welcome to episode 6 of our podcast. I want to start by saying some fool trying to steal our thunder and copying our podcast name. While I know we didn't come up with or copyright the Elite Four, obviously Pokemon did, we actually did some name researching, and we were trying not to steal from somebody who already had that name. So we literally did research of like what's not used and like what we should name ourselves, and we're slightly offended that someone is just like, let's copy this and call ourselves the Elite Four podcast. And I will add a second rant. They're not even 4 people. We all have our roles. We know who's who in the Elite Four.
It's kind of weird because like there was another Elite Four podcast before us, but they haven't done anything in years, so we're like, well, it's kind of safe to assume that name.
Yeah. So we're the original and the real Elite, the current Elite Four, I guess, that's currently,
The ones that matter, yes. The Gen 2 Elite Four.
And we're gendered correctly, too, for Gen 2 Elite Four.
Ooh, that's true.
Ooh. Except for the champion, since, that's not part of the Elite Four, though.
I mean, I guess, yeah, but, like, the Elite Four were gendered correctly.
And the
so
most important part is we're actually elite. That's the most important part.
There it is. Fucking actually elite over here. I got a trophy and a medal. I'm actually looking at both. I'm looking at a first place trophy and a third place medal.
We're elite, but not like Joe Flacco elite, like one hit wonder and then just burn out. He got paid though, so good for him.
Tom Brady, Peyton Manning elite.
Tom Brady sucks.
Football.
I'm not that pompous.
Superman Cam elite? Drew Brees elite?
You guys lost me.
Anyway. All football references.
Football.
Sammy Sosa
Yeah, football.
elite. Definitely Sammy Sosa elite.
No,
or,
not without the steroids.
Just before, I was about to say pre-steroid Barry Bonds elite.
Or post-Barry Bonds.
Ooh. These are the question.
Well,
Steroid era or not steroid era?
Well, diving into what we want to talk about this episode, as you all know, we host some tournaments, focus on Gen 1, Gen 2, but we also want to talk about new things we can do. So not only like our strategies, but also focus on the rules of the tournaments, how we've adjusted those. There's been a couple rules that we've added, a couple that we've removed, and then also, as we dive in more, we'll get into sort of advanced techniques because we're so elite, like breeding, and even some like region design, depending on how creative we get. So I can start with an icebreaker question, which is, what strategy have you seen other people use that you would never want to try yourself?
So for me, what my former roommate Nick dubbed the nuclear option, that is using a Curslax, a Snorlax that knows Curse, because it's actually a really good strategy objectively, because Snorlax is already slow, so you're sacrificing your speed to improve your attack and defense. So he's losing basically nothing because he's going to be the slower one most of the time anyway, to gain a higher attack and defense. And it makes Snorlax just unstoppable because Snorlax already has really high HP, already has pretty good special defense, and you're just making its really strong attack even better. And it can be really hard to stop. Once a Curslax gets going, it can be really hard to stop. And that's one that I wouldn't really want to use myself because I want to still have friends. And I think only one person has ever used a Curslax, and they only used it one time. It was Dylan. He used it against me in the finals of Tournament 3. And it didn't work out for him because I actually had something that was focusing on special attack anyway, so his higher defense wasn't really helping him.
I love that your reply is, I want to still have friends.
Well, I mean, that is, if you use a Curslax, you better be ready for, like, a lot of upset, butthurt people.
I feel like I've always said this, I don't have a Snorlax, I don't find it useful, but also a strategy that I don't want to try, and maybe I'll change my mind, is stupid sand attack accuracy reducing strategy. I find it stupid and remedial. And I'm like, I am more elevated than this. I'm not going to revert to sand attack.
Blinding sand attack.
But I've seen Rick do it. I've also seen Michael do it with a Kingdra, and it works. But I just find it dumb.
Come at me, bro.
Well, let's hold off on talking about that a little bit, since that's part of our topic for today, and we'll get into it a little bit later.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me think of another strategy that people want.
I think
Honestly, I think the one strategy that I thought was pretty intriguing, Tyler used it, was the baton pass one. So he basically did like a swords dance on a couple different Pokemon, baton passed it over to something else. Part of me is like, man, I ain't got the patience for that. So let's just move on and pick something else, like sand attack, and just annoy the crap out of people. But that's just me.
That's actually a fair point, because some of the things that I've seen people do, and I don't have the patience for it, is like a full setup of like a sunny day, fire type, swap through grass type into a solar beam, and I was like, I don't want to have to think that hard about every next 15 moves I'm going to make. I want a little bit more flexibility in who I'm
I just want to do hyper beam and blow people out of the water. And that's it.
That's called the power technique. Yeah, that gets me into the technique that I don't like, is definitely like the sunny day rain dance. And even though Sandstorm really doesn't do anything, it's like really, what's the point of having Sandstorm if you're, only going to have like one rock ground Pokemon in your entire lineup, to where you're just taking damage for no reason, to where if you have a Steelix that can just get one-hitted by anything with a water attack. So that one I always found pointless and just kind of unnecessary, because you can make up all of that work very quickly by using a different strategy that's a little bit more effective, like paralyzing and Thunderbolt, versus having a rainy day and a Thunder, where Thunder has only 120 damage, and Thunderbolt has 95, and like with those two moves, you will get more out of the Thunderbolt than you will the Thunder and Rain Dance. That's the kind of the reason why I don't like it. And then the other one that I'm personally have kind of shied away from is the Destiny bonding. And before we started recording, we were kind of talking about how you use Wobbuffet, who is a Wobbuffet, who is it's a very interesting Pokemon to use, Wobbuffet, and we'll get into it later. But just kind of like having a Gengar with Destiny Bond just kind of defeats the entire purpose of using Gengar.
I see what you're saying about Gengar, because that's one of the same complaints that people have with Exploders, because they don't like raising a Pokemon and then just exploding it. You have to go in just knowing that the entire point of that Gengar is to die, as long as it's bringing something else down with it. And that's just kind of the mindset.
Glares at Laura.
Yeah, that's kind of just the mindset you have to go in with.
Well, that's because you've not only fallen for that Gengar, but also made the huge mistake of letting that Gengar take down two of your Pokemon, which should never happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wasn't planning on it because you never freaking use it, so I was getting ready for the other Pokemon that actually matter, and then...
You mean I read my opponent correctly?
Wait, so
wow, is this Laura making a revelation in her battling skill? Oh man, we should all pat ourselves on the back.
I will.
Laura got the dub, bro. that Gengar came in like
Catch me outside.
John Cena.
RKO out of nowhere.
I think that's what's so fun for us, though, is we still stay true to our own strategies and still win and lose and keep it competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly there's no one way to do this, because otherwise one of us would have landslide victories all the time, which is my favorite part about it, is that I can pick my favorite Pokemon and favorite move types and move sets and not have to have a Snorlax, because I hate Snorlax and I can still win without one.
I think the only downside to that is, Snorlax is so powerful, you still have to keep it in mind, and so you've had to build some of your team just around the fact that there's going to be so many Snorlaxes around. So it is a little bit limiting, but I definitely agree with what you say overall.
That makes sense. As a constant reminder that we always give, we do Gen 1 and Gen 2. We play on the Nintendo 64 system via Pokemon Stadium 2, and we play the Poke Cup format, which is level 50 to 55. It has a couple bans or rules built in, but otherwise it's pretty open, which is what we like. So to our tournaments, you cannot bring a Mew, a Mewtwo, a Ho-Oh, a Lugia, or a Celebi. Those are the only Pokemon that are banned.
Hey, get that crap out of here.
They're just, well, also, like, you, unless you've Game Sharked it, you're not going to get a level 51 Mew. Which we also, Game Shark not allowed. Get that out of here. We'll notice you're banned, you're booted. And then separately also, the Nintendo 64 Poke Cup has a no Pokemon can be asleep and frozen clause, as well as you cannot bring the same Pokemon twice or the same item twice. So you can't bring 3 Snorlaxes all with leftovers.
Or also, let me just step in on the sleep and frozen. No 2 Pokemon asleep or frozen. So, but you can have one frozen and one asleep.
Yes.
Yeah, that was something that I think they input in everything. I think that's just, I don't know if they did it on the first Pokemon Stadium, but it was one of the early rule changes that they did.
I think it holds true even now in the updated games.
Yeah.
But yeah, we definitely all raise our own Pokemon. We don't allow game sharking, and we've had people bring rentals to tournaments. It doesn't work out as well because you can't pick the movesets on rentals, but you can do it. And we've had the gamut. We've had people breed their own Pokemon and raise it from level 5, or we'd have people like Bailey who catch a Rhydon, the weekend before and just play.
Just gave it a fissure and horn drill. Trigger.
It works.
I don't even think she raised it. I think it was at the perfect level. She's like, oh, I guess I need a Rhydon.
Yep, that was what happened.
Yeah, God.
But in addition to those rules, we've added a couple of our own as we've hosted tournaments and realized what's fair, what's not fair. These are kind of to limit some of the cheap shotters and make people think a little bit. So the 2 things that we've banned in addition to those standard rules that come on the game and on the N64 Pokemon Stadium game is parish trapping we do not allow, and we are limited to 1 baton passer because we do a 3v3.
Yeah, the baton passing, it builds up to more in a 6-on-6. So if you had 4 baton passers and you just you pass, a swords dance to an acid armor to an agility, that can really get out of hand in a 6-on-6. And I guess in a way, if you can make that work somehow, then that's actually pretty cool. But it just, I don't know,
too much thinking.
I don't know if I would say it's too much thinking. It's just someone's doing this and then they just one hit your entire team, and it's just annoying and it kind of turns people off. And we want people to play. We want people to come and play, not just come in and think they can. I don't know. It's not the World Championships in Tokyo or something like that, And parish trapping is just dirty.
Yeah, I think we keep an element of lightness and fun to it, where we're not don't come in here and that you dirty parish trapper for 3 Pokemon, because that's not fun. It's not a intense you're sweating during the match type of tournament. Well, unless you're Mike and you suck. But
oh, you still sweat.
I mean, unless you're Laura and you have to double second guess all your freaking movesets and bounce it off of Tyler for 5 years.
We outlawed coaching eventually.
Tournament win.
Does someone want to define parish trapping real quick?
Oh, got it. So, parish trapping, there's a move that is typically learned by the Pokemon Mischievous and also Lapras in Gen 2. I don't remember which other ones. So, the song Parish Song, or the move Parish Song, rather, it gives both Pokemon 3-turn countdown. 3 turns, both Pokemon will faint, and then it counts down. However, you can negate it by switching your Pokemon out. And so Parish Trapping is the move Mean Look, where it prevents the other trainer from switching the Pokemon out. And then they'll use Parish Song, and then you got 3 moves, and then you're done. Even if you can knock out the Pokemon that used Parish Song, the Parish Song countdown still is valid. And to that case in point, it's kind of a stupid thing, and like it gets done in the actual game itself in some of this tournament and stadium modes. There's a couple AI trainers that use that tactic, and it's just so frustrating because you basically have to try to bulldoze them before they try to do it.
Yeah, and on top of that, if you're the Pokemon that used Perish Song and Mean Look, you can still switch out. So you end up not getting KO'd, just the opponent. And it's just, it's one of those things, it's almost like brainless to do, because you just do these couple of moves, and it's I don't know, it's just really dirty, and it's not fun. It's not even fun to do to someone, except maybe like one time against your worst enemy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really even a strategy. It's just like a gimmick. Like, oh, this works, or
It's
what?
a crutch. Yeah.
Luckily, we didn't really ever have people that were wanting to do it at the tournament. I think Dylan talked about doing it one time, but he never ended up making up a team to have it. I know Nick had a Mischievous that had Perish Song, but he didn't go full Perish trapping with it.
Mischievous is an interesting Pokemon.
I've actually never had. No, I mean I've caught one, but I've never used a Mischievous.
Tricky. They're very tricky because they're just straight ghost.
I'm actually using one right now in my playthrough of Diamond version, just because in Gen 4 they added an evolution for it.
That's not Gen 2.
Right, but they added an evolution for it in Gen 4, and I wanted to see what it looks like. But I've never really used one. Like, I caught one in Gen 2, but I never really used it.
I was gonna make a joke that says Mike's weak to Ghost. Gengar.
Can't see me.
Can't see me, can't see me.
Can't see me.
Because we've hosted, obviously Tyler hosted, like, was the true host of the first couple, and there's been some we've hosted together. So he's heard, and we've heard a lot of people's, like, knee-jerk reactions of if they lost a match, they all of a sudden kind of want to be like, so I want to speak to the manager, and they want to talk to us about, like, the rules being unfair, or what they want to change, or what their knee-jerk reactions are. So I think the first one we should discuss is the knee-jerk reaction to Snorlax after Tournament 2.
So I do have to ask, Rick, you had a Snorlax from the beginning, right?
I think I had one at the second tournament. I'm not sure if I had one at the first one.
Okay.
But I know for the second one, I definitely did.
I know that Connor and I both had Snorlaxes at the first tournament, but I thought you had one, and I must have been wrong. But the second tournament specifically, everyone had a Snorlax. I don't know what it was. Maybe they saw, because Connor's Snorlax was really successful at the first tournament. Maybe they saw how much he was riding that one and picked it for their own teams. But Tournament 2 was like the Snorlax Apocalypse.
It was an avalanche of this Snorlax. I mean,
Avalanche of rests.
I think everyone saw how good he could be and how hard he was to take down, because I don't think anyone really had a strategy for taking down a Snorlax other than Laura, who brought them a champ who was like my job is to kill Snorlax. My job is to find the Snorlax, rip its head off, and like punt it over a fence. That's my job. That's what Laura did.
And
she did that with the third tournament. No, screw this.
He does that. Chop. Death.
Yeah, the second one...
After the second one, it was just all, Snorlax.
The second one, it was funny because there were a lot of people that wanted to ban Snorlax, because even people that had their own Snorlaxes, because they all said, well, everyone has a Snorlax, so what's the point? Why don't we just take it away? And I remember Nick was saying, well, yeah, except that we've already adapted from the first tournament where, like, Starmie was really popular, and you didn't see as many Starmies in the second one. You saw more Snorlaxes. And he was like, people are going to change their strategies as tournaments go on. And so that was one of the things. Like, I didn't really want to ban it anyway, but that was one thing that it was like, yeah, we're going to come up with, like, plans to get around that.
They kind of evolved into, like, how, like, everyone's Snorlaxes that came in was a little different.
Mm-hmm.
Like my first one had Solar Beam. It was a nice little wild card to whip out on somebody. Although probably a waste of the Solar Beam TM, but regardless, it was kind of funny to sometimes pull out there.
Well, and to Tyler's point, in whatever the word is, subset tournaments, the next tournaments, words are hard today, guys. We saw less of them, or we saw people have strategies for them. So I think those work themselves out, where we saw way less Starmies, way less Snorlaxes, just because people were building their teams. And obviously we saw people do less dumb things, like less Pikachus and less Ivysaurs were brought. Live and learn. The other one, which we all know...
Light Ball Pikachu.
Light Ball Pikachu?
Tyler's Light Thing Pikachu.
That one's legit.
Isn't that a suicide Pika?
No, that was the Pikachu that 3-0'd his team once. I did get lucky with that critical hit on Snorlax, but
that was like, we were just like, I'm going to try some.
yeah, that wasn't in tournament or anything.
I don't think you would have it's so unreliable to where it's like it's a glass cannon.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of getting lucky with accuracy, the other one, which we've mentioned so many times because it blows my mind, like, that this Rhydon was as good as it was, but Fissure and Horn Drill, we definitely heard some flack from people who, got knocked out of a tournament because a Fissure hit or a Horn Drill hit, and they wanted to ban, one-hit moves, which feels very dramatic, too.
I think that overall, the people that wanted to ban... I think it was mainly just Mary wanted to ban the Fissure Horn Drill moves. I don't remember there being too many people... there weren't people. There were people that were upset that it happened to them, but I don't remember that many people being like, "No, that was garbage. That absolutely should not be in the tournaments. You should ban it." I think it was mostly just Mary.
I was unbelievably butthurt about it, but I was just, wasn't like, oh my god, Fissure needs to get disallowed. Just like, are you kidding me, Fissure? Of all times to hit twice.
Been there. I think it's exactly what you said. Like, it stings when it happens to you, but it's a completely legal move. A lot of Pokemon can learn it. It requires no game sharking, no breeding, no cheating. It's just a good move when it hits.
Yeah, it's just lucky.
It's a one-hit KO.
And I think it happened...
5 out of 100.
I think it happened to her... I don't think it happened 3 times, but I know it happened at least twice. And so, like,
I remember I got hit twice by it in the same battle. I remember that.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
Literally.
I didn't know it was the same battle because I know you played Bailey twice in one of the tournaments.
I think it was the one that I lost to Bailey. Was where I got hit by Fissure or Horn Drill twice. I'm pretty sure it was Fissure twice in the same battle.
Good times.
And then the other one we've mentioned before, but it's funny to bring up, is people wanted to ban a certain player for just being very good. Which I also think is just a lack of competitive edge. If someone's really good, you just got to figure out a way to take them down.
Yeah, I mean,
he came in kind of hard the first time he played, but he dialed it back. Okay, like he realized, okay, this is more of like a fun kind of thing, not a big deal. But yeah, even so, like, dude, and up, beat him, beat him.
It was it was legitimately more than just 1 or 2 people too. Like most of the other ones, with Snorlax, it was like there was like whisperings of people being like, "Oh, I wish Snorlax was banned," and then Fissure and Horn Drill was a small amount of people, but for people that didn't want Mike to play in the tournaments, it was a couple, and it was people that
not me.
Right, not you, right. The other Mike. It was people that had never really played in a competitive atmosphere before, or hadn't played, maybe they'd played in a competitive atmosphere, but like, with their cousin who was really good, not, someone that goes online and plays in online tournaments.
Someone who really knows the ins and outs of really how to get the most out of your Pokemon.
Or like us.
Well, I think you bring up a good point that a lot of people faced the first time they played a tournament with us, is there's a lot of random people who are good at Pokemon in their own friend circles, and then they come to a tournament where majority of the people know what they're doing and all of a sudden they're at the bottom of the pack, and then they have to kind of rethink your strategy. So it's almost like being exposed from like a college athlete to a pro athlete, like that type of, you know, sort of shell shock, being like, oh, these players they're all just good.
Yeah, as soon as you hit that level, it's like, hey, everyone's just as good as you, if not better. So if you're in this tournament, you know what you're doing.
I think part of it is just a product of what video games and like the state of the internet were like at the time, because we couldn't play video games online at the, you know, that just wasn't a thing. Like, you couldn't plug your Game Boy into the internet unless you had
That's fair.
Japanese crystal version. And so you only had your little group. And I think all of us can say the same thing about Mario Kart 64 as well, where we meet someone that says they're amazing at it and like they can't even power slide.
Yeah, it's different when you get in that atmosphere, and then you're like, I'm good, and then you walk into their house and they're like, hey, I heard you're good, I can beat you, and then your two roommates look at, you know, the kid and they're like, you don't know.
And it's funny you say that, because I had the exact opposite experience. I grew up thinking I was complete trash at Mario Kart because all three of these people are very, very good. And then I went to college and was like, oh, I'm slaughtering everybody.
Yeah.
Even like traditionally, like even like a whole bunch of guys that are like, oh, you're not good at Mario Kart, and you just curb stomp them.
That's true.
But it is just because my circle that I learned from would just happen to be really good.
And that's probably part of the reason that you got so good.
Every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. One of us is going to win. Like, if all four of us are playing, one of us is going to win. One of us is going to lose. Three of us going to be a little pissed. It's okay.
Well, I will also add, for the, you know, audience enjoyment, my older brother would not teach me how to power slide because he did not want to lose. So once I learned that from an outside source, Tyler.
And then there was the playing field got leveled, and then Rick got butthurt that he was being able to get beat by both of his little siblings, not just one.
I think Laura's beaten me more times than you have.
Yeah, that's a lie.
Truth.
I don't think so.
They might have played more often, though, Mike.
Mm-hmm, that's true.
No regrets.
Rick just remembers it because he gets so butthurt about it.
No regrets. Throwback
No regrets.
I want to add a throwback of, like, it still blows my mind that, like, when I grew up playing video games, the internet did not exist, and I'm not that old, where, like, to play somebody in Pokemon, you had to have a link cable, go to their house, and plug it into their Game Boy. Like, there was none of this, like, jump on Halo at midnight and, like, chat with your friends and, like, play the game. It didn't exist.
Also, can we please, like, make a port of of Pokemon Stadium 2 that we could actually do that? Because
Oh
that'd
my
be freaking
gosh.
awesome.
That'd be awesome. On Switch?
We say that every time. The capability exists. I don't know why they don't do it.
To be fair, I don't know what sort of audience they would be catering to. I mean, like, the four of us would all do it, but I don't know how many people are looking to play Gen 2 online. I know that the Virtual Console games sold very well.
Money!
But they wouldn't even have to put that much new technology in it. They would just put something that already exists into a platform that allows it.
That's true.
Money! Yeah, but what's the profit margin on that? Nintendo's got to get that money.
They have enough money.
They want more.
They're gonna launch the new Zelda Breath of the Wild game next year, and it's gonna like double the sales of Breath of the Wild.
Oh man.
I heard Breath of the Wild is a very good game.
It's
Yes,
great.
it is.
Yes.
Oh, Rick actually played it.
All right, well, going back on topic to our rules of these tournaments, we're always, you know, open to people's justifications for new rules or removing old rules. I think some new ones that have come into play is limiting rest talkers, similar to baton passers, which I think warrants it. I don't think it's as much of a cheap shot. It's just a very boring match if somebody has a bunch of rest talkers.
I forgot about that.
In all honesty, I just see it as a limiting factor. Like, okay, you do rest, you have sleep talk, and you only have 2 moves after that. So if you're not sleeping, you ain't attacking. So why use it? That's just me. I don't necessarily like the strategy. If I'm facing someone who does, cool. But
The Gen 2 was kind of known as like a really stally type battle style, and part of that is because like if you have 6-on-6, you could have a bunch of rest talkers if you wanted to. And so we were just trying to make sure we didn't have another Rick and Connor match that was 45 minutes long.
yay!
Part of the reason that we wanted to limit it was just so we didn't get another Rick and Connor 45-minute match, happening all the time. But also, Rick's kind of right. It's a little bit limiting and kind of like it's not the most intelligent strategy, because you just throw 2 good moves on a Pokemon and then the other 2 are already, stuck there with rest and sleep talk, and you just got to make sure you're not miscounting how long you've been asleep.
Yeah, because if you are, then you miss an opportunity to go back to sleep.
So we have talked about doing just 1 rest talker on the team, because if you had 3 rest talkers, good lord, that would be the longest battle ever. Especially if you had like Snorlax and Lapras and Kingdra or something.
Maybe a Chansey in there. I don't know.
Surprised if somebody brought 3, because it'd almost be boring to play. Even if you were gonna win, it'd be boring to play in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that.
Says the guy who used Struggle.
Hey,
That was a battle of wills.
Gengar did good, all right?
Going back to like potentially cheap shotty or planning or knowing your moves, what are your thoughts on accuracy and evasion moves? I know Rick and Mike actually are big accuracy reducing moves, like Sand Attack. I can't remember what Kingdra has.
Smoke screen.
That's it.
Double
Sand
team.
Attack.
Yep.
Give me Sand Attack all day. Sand Attack, Mud Slap, oh yeah. Give it to me.
Smoke screen too is
Love
the
it.
same. Does the same thing.
It's like the stupidest thing. Like a Pidgey at like level 7 learns Sand Attack. My Jolteon has it. Why? Because it wrecks you, and you're like, really? I can't get off a name a thing because
And
I've
that's
got
where
Sand
you have
Attack
to
twice.
realize. Yeah, and that's where you have to realize that you got to switch out and switch back. That takes 2 turns.
Yeah, but some people just get super frustrated with it, and they're just like, I need this one thing to hit to kill this stupid Pokemon. But the problem is, if I hit you with one Sand Attack and you miss your next attack, I'm just going to hit you with another Sand Attack, and now your accuracy drops that much further. So it's increasingly more difficult, and I'm like, yep, opportunity's knocking at the door, and I'm throwing more Sand Attacks at you.
Well, here's an idea. What if you gave yourself double team and Sand Attack on your Jolteon? That would
Again,
be a 2-edged
I,
sword.
again, thought about that, but it still limits my move set. I do want to stay a little bit more versatile, if you will.
I hear tiny human. I hear the tiny human. Yeah, absolutely. To where along the lines of like, Sand Attack or double team, they serve the same purpose. Let's be real. And if you give yourself both of them, it kind of defeats the purpose of having one or the other, because like you said, Rick, it just kind of limits your ability to have another move that could be useful, whether it be, I remember one of my Jolteons has Double Edge, which is maybe kind of a strange attack to have on a Jolteon, but it actually is not too bad to where, if I don't have something that can use an electric attack, like I can say if I'm facing a ground Pokemon and I'm down to my last Pokemon, that Double Edge is certainly useful. And if I had Double Team and Sand Attack, I wouldn't have it.
What I will say is useful about that strategy, because it's annoying when it's you and you're missing, while you can switch out and kind of reset that clock, you are letting them see into your, set of Pokemon more than maybe you'd like to.
That's the idea.
Yeah, it's interesting. I looked into what a lot of other tournaments and rule sets have for later generations and just generally online, and a lot of times they'll ban evasion moves like double team and minimize, but they'll allow accuracy moves like Sand Attack and Smokescreen because you can switch out and it negates those effects, whereas Double Team and Minimize, you're relying on the opponent to switch or it's just going to stay forever unless you use something like Haze or whatever. But Haze, I have not seen anyone use Haze or Mist at any of the tournaments we've done. And eventually, like if everyone started running Sand Attack or Mud Slap or something, you would start to see Haze and Mist come in. And I think it's just one of those things that it's tough to implement well on a 3-on-3 team like Pokecup runs, because in 6-on-6 you can sacrifice a move on somebody for that, which is the same reason that Spikes and Rapid Spin works better in a 6-on-6. But people might not be as willing to sacrifice a move for Haze in 3-on-3. We haven't seen it so far, at least, but also you guys are really the only ones that have used accuracy moves at all.
And I think, Tyler, you and I talked about this a couple years ago, to where I was trying to put together a hazing Crobat. As weird as that sounds. To where I was thinking along that kind of line, to where, you know, if someone did do like a couple swords dances, and I could whip out that Crobat and just get rid of that. And, you know, Crobat is actually not that bad of a Pokemon. Golbat stinks, but once it evolves into Crobat, it's super fast, and, you know, if you give it Confuse Ray, Haze, and like two other decent moves, I mean, it has the potential to be reasonably useful.
So if we had to put our vote to it, I'm guessing that Rick and Mike would both say, don't ban accuracy and evasion moves.
They're both good.
I really have tried to avoid banning things as like a TO, because once you start banning stuff, I feel like that kind of
sterilizes it.
It does, and it starts getting into water, like murky waters, where you're like, oh, are we just banning this because we don't like it? Are we banning this because we're lazy and don't want to have to think about it and combat it? Or are we doing it because it legitimately helps to get more people come in and play? So I would still, unless everyone ran Sand Attack and Double Team on like every team, I would probably avoid banning it.
Yeah, and not even like all of my combinations have a Sand Attack or a Smoke Screener, although some of my recent ones certainly do. But it's just kind of along the lines of like, hey, it's certainly a legitimate strategy, and, you know, if people counter it, then, well, now you gotta adapt again.
Yeah, I think some of them, like the accuracy and evasion ones, that can be easily avoided as whether, you know, a switch or 100% accuracy move or a move that doesn't miss. Some of it does come across as lazy, as in like, oh, we only want, you know, power hitter Pokemon to make it, you know, flashy and exciting. We don't want to play defense. We want, you know, only Hyper Beams all day. And I think it does come across like a little bit lazy, or like you said, a little bit targeted if somebody's winning off a strategy and you tell them they can't do it anymore. Like, why can, you know, Rick have a Snorlax, but I can't have a Sand Attacking Jolteon? So it does get into murky waters like that. It feels very targeted.
Yeah, I think you're right. A lot of times the knee-jerk response is a targeted response because like one specific person did something that really got under someone's skin. Is there anything else you guys have maybe thought of wanting to see removed from tournaments before?
The one that I understand, but it's impossible to remove, is the switching. Like, maybe you limit to somebody to, like, you know, 4 switches a match, but that's so impossible because then you could just, you know, accuracy trap them, which is, I think, if you limit switching, and I see why it's annoying if you're playing somebody who plays a switch game in and out, and, you know, you can't land a hit because all they do is switch and you feel like the match is not moving on. I do think it's a tough thing to ban, because then what you could do is you could accuracy trap somebody.
Yeah, not only that, it's like along the lines of like, oh, sorry that I'm trying to, like, you know, play to my strategy, trying to, you know, not let my Pokemon that has a weakness to your Pokemon get one hit. I mean, it kind of, yeah, limiting switching I think goes against the spirit of just even the game itself.
I've definitely had and maybe I'll bring it up if we bring Caden on, because I know when we were playing a match he wasn't thrilled because I was switching a lot because my tight matchups were like so strong, meaning it was going to be like a one hit KO or not effective, so I had to switch a lot in that match to survive, and I know he was getting frustrated, but I'm also like, I'm not going to let you one hit my entire team, so here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see where putting a switch limit in the tournament would be interesting because it changes up the strategy a little bit. Now, banning switching altogether, no. I don't think that would be a viable option because at the beginning of the match, if you were to throw your first one out there and it's not a great tight matchup for you, but it's like, well, I'm screwed for this one and the next one, and I'm done. So I don't think that's a viable option, but putting a limit on the number of switches really kind of makes you think about which Pokemon is out there, and I sacrifice this one to get at least half of their HP down for my next one, knowing that the opponent only has a limited number of switches too. So that could be an interesting rule change.
And it's funny, I think you say that because that rule change plays into your team.
Well, it can play into any team, depending on, the strategy. The strategy changes because the game changes.
I think part of the reason that, because I've heard other people mention limits on switches or not switching, I think part of the reason that people think about that is because that was something that they always said whenever Ash would have to go fight a gym leader on the show, is the challenger was allowed to change their Pokemon, but the gym leader was not.
I guess I see where they're coming from, but that's like you said, a gym leader battle, not a tournament battle. I guess I'm not opposed to a switch limit, but I don't know what kind of number you have in your head when you're like, what's the switch limit?
I, for one, would not be a fan of limiting switching.
Yeah, me too. It's just kind of an essential part of the game, if I'm being honest. Like, even throughout like the gameplay itself, like the actual story mode of the game, is reliant upon you recognizing when it's time to switch.
Rick, since you're on board for it, potentially, what kind of switch limit did you have in your head when you first thought about it?
I would say 4.
4 for the whole match?
Yeah.
Why do you settle on 4?
Because if you do have a tight matchup that you want to exploit or not get totally train wrecked on, you're able to switch in and out a few times to kind of negate that. But it kind of prevents some of the, going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and just makes the game flow a little bit quicker. Now, if you're doing it to survive, that's a different strategy, but I don't know. Either 4 or 1 would be interesting.
1 would be rough, but it's also funny to think about like battles you've had where you just didn't switch at all. I feel like I don't switch that much. I'll switch if it's like a terrible matchup, like if it was like a Lapras versus Dragonite and I had the ability to switch, I would definitely be switching my Dragonite out. But most of the time I feel like you wouldn't come up against that. Maybe like a Golem versus like a water type, because Golems have been pretty popular at the tournaments, and water types are like always popular.
Yeah.
I feel like, I guess maybe an excessive limit, but I was thinking like 8 to 10, because I want to say I switch more often than not, but that's also because I'm just unlucky. So generally, I'm going to pull a matchup, and it's probably not going to be right for me. I'm going to have to switch it out. And then let's say I have, a Golem, and then they pull in a Lapras, I'm going to want to switch a second time, and telling me I can't switch a second time feels like, why play a little bit?
Well, part of your strategy, too, is using your Skarmory as a sponge, and so, like, switching that Skarmory in is, like, a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it would definitely change the strategy, and I would, if we were to do it, I would need plenty of heads up so I could change my team, because my current team could probably handle 6 switches a match. 1 is impossible, and 4 I think is even tough.
I think
there would definitely be more heads up, I think, needed if we were to change something like that.
I think
That's
if we
a big change,
did,
yeah.
I think if we did like a no switch tournament, that our team makeup would completely change. We wouldn't bring Pokemon that had like 4 times weaknesses. We would bring
Yes.
the Pokemon that were, you would see a team that was like Kingdra
Starmie would show
Snorlax, Kingdra Snorlax Starmie or something like that.
You would see something that can use a lot of different move types to cover a lot of bases.
Yeah, and to Tyler's point, I don't think he would ever show up with the Dragonite to that tournament because if you can't switch and somebody has a nice move, you're dead.
Yeah, at that point, just do Hyper Beam and just hope for the best.
I hope for the best. Your only chance is if you freeze it. Frozen solid. I will add as a new topic. Sorry, let me scratch that. I do want to add as sort of a new addition to episodes going forward. We've mentioned some key players in some of our past tournaments that have been standouts based on how they placed or Pokemon they brought, and we are working on bringing some of them onto the podcast as our guests. So you've heard us mention some of them a few times, and I think in the coming episodes we will bring them on as guests, and you can hear a voice that isn't ours, but also get their take on some of the people who maybe had this ride on, or the people who did win the tournament, or the people who were voting for bans, and kind of get their take.
Should be a good time to get some perspective that's not just our own, because I feel like the four of us have a pretty uniform opinion most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, we've bounced ideas off each other, and we've battled each other so much, and like, a few of the people specifically that I've talked to, I might not have played them as often as I've played other people, and sometimes they have played some of you guys more often than me, so their perspective would be a little bit different.
I would concur.
Yeah, it would definitely be interesting to hear people who maybe played us in tournament 1 versus tournament 4, or played me if I didn't bring my Machamp versus if I did, because it's a very different match. If you're coming at me with a Snorlax or if you're coming at me with a Gengar, I'm going to play you very differently. Same for the three of you guys.
Yeah, or just kind of seeing what our strategies are from a perspective to where we know each other pretty well, but seeing talking to someone else, just kind of seeing how they wanted to attack us, that kind of deal.
And then the other addition, I want to give a little bit of a teaser for the next episode coming up, because I know we've mentioned it before, but I do want to get into breeding and add that to our agenda item, because I think that's a fun element that even if you played Gen 1 and Gen 2 for a long time, you might not have done.
Inheriting movesets. We'll talk about it later.
Get those steps in.
Oh, yeah.
Tyler, did you want to do results, or are you good? I wasn't sure if it aligned with the topic for this week.
They don't particularly align with the topic, no. The two that I had were just kind of interim ones, because they were, one was just one where we basically just had a party at the apartment and had a dozen people play, and then the other one was one that we tried to do with a local video game store, and that one was just funny because I lost. But it doesn't have anything to do with accuracy or bans or anything.
We love when Tyler loses. Suck it, Tyler.
It's a rarity.
We should wait to talk about that one anyway, because Caden beat me and he was very excited.
Oh, there you go. Nailed it.
All right, well, I think we're going to wrap this episode. As a teaser for the next one, we're going to bring some guests onto the podcast, some people that we've battled in the past and that have done our tournaments. We also want to talk about a new topic of breeding, which we have not talked about before, and even if you are an avid Gen 1 and Gen 2 player, you may not be well-versed in that. So that's a wrap, and this was the Elite Four, a retro Pokemon tournament podcast. My name is Laura.
I'm Tyler.
Rick.
I'm Mike.
No longer eating pizza.